covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company. Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company. Isn't it?
We lighten up the morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. OMG in the morning.
The Love Zone.
The best R&B jams, period.
Hear it on Boom 1069.
Here we go! Locking down the entire universe. It's District 106 on the Boom, Galaxy by far, and DJ Flex on the Evolution Station. Boom 1069.
So we're back inside this morning. We've got Sir James Mitchell, former Prime Minister of SVG, and of course the Cuban cutler there.
To Guyana in the south. Have two companies. And let me just say one more thing. What finally put the nail in our partnership, private sector partnership with British Airways, was Antigua refused to let the plane come into Antigua or go on to Miami. That's what. One, and then BWI did predatory pricing between Barbados and Trinidad, because the international flights like BWI, as it was then, coming in from London, unloaded all the tourists into Barbados, the Caribbean people, plus the tourists for Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada. So BWA was empty flying between Barbados and Trinidad, and they gave a price then, $100 return.
And this new company for this side,
and that is what
private sector company.
That is what caused the collapse of our joint venture.
Right.
So when you telling me what did you do, I established links with a private sector company overseas, and I think it is important we should look for international partner again and restructure it properly, taking the lessons we have learned on board.
Spearheaded by government?
If governments
because that is going back into the arrangement of
governments must spearhead with regard to getting the regulations right. And governments must, if they want to invest with the private sector, Give the government preference shares and no voting shares. Let the private sector run the show. That's my view.
See, what's your take on this? But you've always said that government should completely stay out of this.
I don't want government involved in any way except as a regulator. End of story. I don't want the money. I don't want anything. Let's see what will happen now. Later now then. We have lots of airlines, lots and lots of airlines, and some of them will merge, some will come together. Things will evolve as things go on. Prices will be higher, I suspect. They'll be lower initially, then they'll get higher, and then people will compete and the prices will come back down and the service will improve. The reality is that Bliat bought the wrong planes, have the wrong kind of service for us, and we don't need that anymore. You have to remember that we now have an international airport, right? We're not totally dependent. We are still substantially dependent, particularly the Grenadines, right? Because we don't have any service from Europe yet. But the reality is there are a lot more people now who are coming here who can come directly from Canada and can come from Miami. Those are facts of life, and New York for that matter, right? I don't see the need anymore for the volume of service that we once had on Liat. And you can see the loads are down. The Grenadines are largely serviced by SVGA and Mustique Airways. That can continue to be the case.
Thank you very much, because, without Mustique Airways and SVGA, tourism in this country collapses, because 90% of the revenue from tourism comes out of the Grenadines. And it is that service that produces the results.
Correct.
Do you share the view, Sir James, that Stephen said that the government, that Liat bought the wrong planes?
Well, the results have demonstrated that.
Yes, so I mean, my position, as I said, I've always been, listen, we've tried the government route for 50 years now. Hasn't worked too well. Why not give the private sector route a chance for a couple of years and let's see what happens? But let's have a fair opportunity. Because Cal has already said that they're willing to take up, quote-unquote, 90% of Liat's routes. I'm not too sure that's necessarily a good thing either, because Cal, again, is a government-subsidized entity, right? So I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing. I want to see a level playing field, open skies policy, as Sir James says, and allow people an opportunity to compete. Let SVGA, let Air Carib, let whatever's in St. Lucia, whatever's in, let SVGA compete. SVGA already runs a service up in Antigua. SVGA already runs a service in Grenada. These, they have been doing well. So let's give us a chance, give the private sector a chance to see what service they can provide for you.
Well, you raised a point that is very interesting, Ben and Stephen, with regard to the choice of aircraft. In restructuring and organizing an airline industry, you have to pay careful attention to the planes that are in service and those that are being manufactured. We have this bias in the OECS with the old-time regulation that single-engine planes cannot be used for commercial purposes. But that is only around here. Even in the Northern Caribbean, in St. Martin, St. Barts, etc., it's the Cessna Grand Caravan single-engine plane that is doing the operation. And we can have a Cessna Grand Caravan running between these islands like a bus with 12 people at a time and all the cargo that you want. So leave this to the private sector to determine the feasibility of what will give the service. What we need in St. Vincent is not a one great grand plane,
Correct.
What we need is frequency of service.
That is why my position has always been the Twin Otters, or that size of aircraft, or the Beechcraft, and the Caravans, right? The Cessna Caravan. Those are excellent planes. They're good planes for this area because we can do tons of frequency of flights. They're relatively cheap to maintain, relatively compared to ATRs, right? ATRs, which I believe were manufactured and produced in Europe, and are very, very expensive to run from what I've been told. We've got to give these guys a chance. Let's see what they can do. Let's, even within the next 6 months. Let's see what will be happening within 6 months. The service to the Grenadines is not going to change because that's being done properly, right? Anyway, but we want a service from Barbados to here. We want to go to Grenada. We want to go to St. Lucia. We want to go to Trinidad. Let's see what the private sector can do before Mr. Gaston Brown gets up and the 2020 arrives again, where we continue to repeat the same mistakes and we go down the same road for another 10 or 15 years again.
Okay, so all right, let's move on to Guyana, guys.
Can I ask a quick question first?
Sure.
So, James, I believe you're a student of history. How have most countries that have gotten oil done? How have most countries done economically that have discovered oil? Because I can think of countries like Nigeria. I can think of countries like Venezuela.
I know where you're going.
I can think of countries like the Middle East. And I wonder how the average citizen has benefited from these discoveries. Because I'm very afraid for Guyana. Very afraid.
I'm always delighted to answer that kind of question. And I bring to bear my personal life, my travels, my experiences in other countries. Before I got into politics, I've been all over Europe, studied in Canada, etc. And I've been involved in development, etc. And I have seen what makes progress and what makes failure. I have drawn this single conclusion. The quality of life in a country does not depend on its resources, it depends on leadership.
I once told a story, and I think Bing will remember this, comparing Singapore and Trinidad, both of which got independence around the same time, and I read this article in a Trinidad newspaper a few years ago, comparing Trinidad and Singapore and their development. Singapore has no natural resources. Trinidad has oil. But what was the difference? Well, there's two things apparently, culture and leadership. A culture of hard work, which we don't have in the Caribbean, and leadership matters. It really, really matters. So just to reinforce your point.
Well, Stephen, you ask about reading and history. I can give you a reference. As you mentioned Singapore, is the biography of my friend Lee Kuan Yew. I spent time chatting with him, and I know his philosophy, etc. But he did this beautiful book, From Third World to First. And he talks about the Caribbean, where he went to a meeting in Jamaica. And how Jamaica was talking all about third world development and need all of this kind of thing. You see? And he says, Caribbean people are very articulate. They dance well, and hard work went out with slavery.
Yep, correct. Wasn't it Eric Williams who made the comment that Master Day is done?
Guys, you ought to taking me on a different route.
No, we're bringing it back now to what's going on in the Guyana elections.
Right.
But I would like to know.
Yes. Recently, guys, some citizens of Guyana came out and said, after remarks by Prime Minister Gonsalves about what transpired or his suggestion about what would happen, went into an uproar with comments made by Prime Minister Gonsalves over the elections in Guyana. We've had observers from Guyana, from CARICOM, from the European Union, from Commonwealth, from the Carter Center, all went into Guyana for the Guyana's election. Even local, even simple, what went wrong, Sir James, in your mind? What really happened with Guyana, with the elections?
Well, first of all, I agree with Prime Minister Gonsalves 100% what he said. I disagree with him 100% for saying it. He should not have jumped the gun before the report was lodged with the CARICOM community. You have sent people to examine, and they have not yet produced their report. Why are you jumping in to talk before the report is released?
Why don't we talk exactly? Because a lot of people out there don't know what happened in Guyana. There was an election.
Right.
What transpired? Who won what? Who supposedly won what? And what happened, Sir James?
Well, let me tell you.
And why the confusion?
I did a program in Guyana too, a month ago or so, live on television one night, and discussed the whole situation. And I can refer to some of the points there that I made. The end result is an election has been held in Guyana since the 2nd of March. Where are we now? 7th of July,
Yep.
and no results.
Yep.
Where else in the world
Could that happen?
could that happen? Even in Burma and Myanmar, where they rig everything,
Yep.
the results come out right away.
Yep.
And I can't understand it.
Yeah.
The results are, in fact, the opposition alliance got 171,825 votes.
No,
It's
the opposite way around.
Yeah.
No, the other way around.
Yeah.
Wait, I have a really wrong figure.
Yeah.
You hear?
It's clear. What was clear apparently is that the opposition won the election.
Yes. The PPP Civic in a landslide lead with 15,416 votes, more than its political rival, the caretaker PPP received 233,336 votes, while the government and the APNU 217,920 votes. But let me say this generally. I've been to many elections. I fought plenty. When a government doesn't like the election results that they organize, what does that tell you?
Yep, that they lost.
They lost.
Yep.
They need no political genius
Yep.
to deal with that.
Correct.
They lost.
Yep.
And they're going around in circles about it with a very complicated procedure to say that they have an elections commission, then they have a reporter, and this has to send in reports and so on. Guyana is made up of 10 regions. And Guyana, of course, everybody knows, is racially divided.
Yep.
Let's not ignore that. And it is a continuing problem from Guyana, of the history of Guyana. The only indigenous people are the Indians in Guyana, in the bush. And Guyana, like the rest of the Caribbean, all immigrants.
Right.
Immigrants from Africa, immigrants from India. And that has created the difficulty over the years. Guyana is made up of 10 regions. And all the regions reported well and clearly. But when the results were coming in the Georgetown black-dominated area, they would discover that they were losing. And they stopped releasing the figures. No, you have a situation where number one, all the observers saw everything. All the observers saw everything. The CARICOM observers. And what do you see in my presentation to Guyana? And they asked me to participate because the whole business of observer election started with me and my Mustique meeting. When Forbes Burnham died and our friend Desmond Hoyt took over, there was a rigged election. It was so bad, sometimes in Guyana, that in one area, a government is quite capable of getting 110% of the vote. They can't even rig properly. Yeah.
So do you?
No, so
Well, in the interest of time, though, let me ask you, because I got a lot of questions I want to get. I want to pick your brains a lot this morning. The alleged rigging in Guyana, I'm going to say alleged, okay? Do you see any similarities between that and our petitions that we have in courts right now? Are there any similarities?
Ben, you know you're going to get me in trouble with my party again.
Yep.
I have said early o'clock that the elections are won on the night of election. Have I been proven wrong? You know?
Not yet.
The court. The smart thing in Guyana was that the moment they refused to give the right figures, the opposition filed an injunction the next morning. And they had the evidence on which they were basing. So that is that. When Forbes died, and Desmond Hoyt took over in a rigged election, Dame Eugenia Charles, with all her power coming out of the Grenada Revolution and her dealing with President Reagan and all of that kind of thing, Eugenia, who was a powerful voice in the Caribbean at that time, more powerful than many since, she said that we must kick Guyana out of the Caribbean for the rigged election. Remember? This is since 1985. Where are we again? With history and what is happening. Eugenia kicked up dust. A Trinidadian friend who was head of the Massa Harbor in Trinidad, the Indian Hindu element, came to see me in Beckwith and said, man, what can you do to help our friend Hoyt? Desmond is my good friend, and I'm sure Desmond will give the black people a fair handle of the matter. I'm telling you, because this is the continuing context in Guyana. So when an Indian told me that he wants us from Trinidad, head of a Trinidad Hindu organization, I said, something is wrong here. So I got in touch with the prime ministers in the region, John Compton, the same Eugenia, Herbert Place, Brice and John, and Kennedy Simmons. And I said, fellas, let's get together and I'll arrange a private meeting away from publicity. I'll get Desmond to come up, etc. So I arranged that meeting in Mustique. And as a result of that, we came to a certain conclusion. And the number one conclusion we came to is that there must be no more elections in Guyana without international observers. So the Mustique meeting is the parent of all the observer missions down in there. I went to Nicaragua for an election, brought back all the documents and presented it to Desmond and showed him how you deal with observers and what are the criteria. All of that. But Guyana's problem, as Stephen is touching on, because of the oil.
Well, I was just going to ask you that because Stephen touched on it, and I want to get directly. I mean, I'm going to ask you directly. This oil discovery in Guyana, is this cause of trouble?
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. Guyana has always had its difficulties. But Guyana is a resource-rich country, has always been. Guyana should be one of the most successful countries in the world, given its bauxite, gold, all the natural resources in the world. And they have been a disaster. So has Venezuela, as you know. And Guyana is once again heading down the same way again because we refuse to look at human nature. Unless you have institutions in place that can protect a democracy, then you don't have anything. We have the same situation. The independence of the people running elections is the most fundamental and most critical thing. We do not have enough independence across the whole Caribbean, I believe. in the independence of because the reality is independence and good governance of institutions is dependent largely upon the leadership of the government. And if the interest of the government is strictly aligned with winning elections, as opposed to doing the will of the people or leading the will of the people, you have a problem. Look at the guy in Guyana, the guy who's in charge of elections, who just disqualified 115,000 votes. That's about 20% of the votes. He just decided 115,000 votes shouldn't be counted. Just made this unilateral decision. What is astonishing to me is the uselessness of CARICOM and the Caribbean community. You have a situation like this going on, and we just seem to be sitting back. And Mayor Motley makes a comment the other day about not acceptable. Where are all the other voices in the Caribbean to say this is not acceptable? Is it because we don't care, because we want to make sure that we are good friends with whoever actually happens to control the oil eventually? Is that what it's all about? Because that's what I'm seeing.
Guys, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to some local stuff. Elections in the area in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're going to look at that. I know a lot of people are waiting on that. We're going to do that and come right back. Right, and OMG in the morning, Tuesday morning. We got the Cutlass inside, and Sir James is firing this morning on all pistons. Let's do this and come back.
Bip, messaging makes
Isn't
simple.
it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
the final moments this morning. Guys,
Yes.
I know a lot of persons want to hear from you guys with regards to leadership in the upcoming general elections.
Before we step there, just 1 second.
Yes.
The international community has already made up their mind about whether elections were free or not, irrespective of what I think, Sir James think, or anybody else. They have made up their minds, and they do it, I presume, on the basis of what they consider to be accurate evidence. So that'll be resolved anyway. Now to talk about leadership.
Yes, leadership in the upcoming St. Vincent. We're talking St. Vincent. Move from Guyana to St. Vincent now. Do you guys think leadership is going to be a deciding factor in this coming general election?
In my view, it should be the only thing that should matter. I remember, I think it was a 2010 election, Sir James, or 2015, I can't think it was 2010, when the issue then was about leadership. That was made the central issue by, I believe, the ULP at that time, right? Arnhem versus Ralph. Who do you want to be your prime minister, right? The reality is, when you look at the power that a prime minister has in our country, a prime minister is a king for 5 years or 4.5 years, basically. He can do almost anything he wants, so James can correct me. But basically, he's a king. So to me, what really matters when you're going in the ballot boxes, who is going to be your leader? Who is going to be making the big decisions? Who is going to be guiding and leading? So to me, this election again has to be, as all previous elections have been, right? When Sir James was running against Vincent Beach, it was about leadership. It was Vincent versus Sir James. When Ralph took over, it was about Ralph versus Arnhem. And now it is going to be about Friday versus, because irrespective of your local I really don't believe that your local candidates make a huge difference. I think ultimately, and I may very well be wrong, people make the decisions on who's our leader, who do we want to be our prime minister, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. So James?
But before you, so James, you have always said that people don't hardly changes their mind.
That is correct.
As well. So where does that?
You don't need huge changes in politics. The NDP have their 45% vote no matter what. So does the ULP.
And there's a one-seat majority.
Exactly, and there's a one. So you don't need huge changes, you know. So James won his biggest landslide ever, and he had 60% of the people. That means 40% didn't want him, and he had a huge land. That was a 15 zip. Yes. The biggest I think that the ULP have got, I think, is 56% at one time, right? I think. So subject to me being corrected, I think it's always and has always been and will probably always be in our type of system about who do you want to be your prime minister.
So James, do you think somebody wants to know, do you think leadership is going to be a deciding factor in the upcoming general elections?
Leadership is always a big issue. There are other components of winning an election. As I see it, leadership number one, strategy number two, money number three, and
not number one?
Team. The team.
So money is not number one?
Money will only come if you have the good leadership.
If you have good leadership.
Good point.
Catch what I mean?
Let me just. I mean, somebody may think that this is a trivial question, but what exactly do you mean when you say strategy? Give me an example. As a man who's done it so many times.
Strategy is the overall policy and how you market your policy and how you present yourself, how you present the people, and you what you do when and all of that kind of thing.
Okay.
But let me say this, as far as the other general point always to remember, Stephen made it earlier. I won on a negative vote in 1984, and I won on a very positive note in 1989.
This is a negative note of vote.
Negative vote.
Negative vote.
Meaning what?
Let's vote you out.
Oh, okay.
They vote out a government.
Okay.
There are two kinds of votes people do. They vote in a government and they vote out of government. You follow? And it is always said that people throw out a government, and it is the government never win an election, is the opposition that lose. That is one philosophy. Bear that in mind.
And can it be the other way around? Well, it's the other way around as well.
Anyway, that is that. Now, what is the mood?
Stephen got it wrong. Let's
got it wrong.
No, I got to say something
Go ahead.
important before Stephen goes.
Okay.
This election, the mood of St. Vincent is, tell me if I'm wrong, a fed up or Ralph.
We will find out if that is true or not.
That's right. Number two, Recent polls I know have shown that Dr. Friday is ahead with likability and integrity over Ralph and Camilo.
Why and Camilo? Just to throw smoke in the wall.
Yeah.
I have to run. I have a 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
Gotta
okay,
go,
Stephen.
guys.
Okay, good.
So James, it was a
I'll
pleasure
wrap it
as
up with Sir James. Let's continue, Sir James. Go ahead.
Yes. Ralph,
I fed up a Ralph and likability. Likability and what's the other one?
integrity.
And integrity.
Likability. In other words, people don't have a negative view of Dr. Friday. And that is not just a matter of voting for the comrade again, you know. Because, you see, it's all in the context of COVID. It's all in the context of pressure. All in the context of victimization. All in the question of choice. You know, even before COVID, people have been suffering in this country. And we know that. It's not Son Mitchell saying so. Whether you like it, me or not, you know that things are bad in this place, and it was bad before COVID. You know, let me give you one sad experience I had. Somebody told me. He and his wife, a man and his wife, were getting in the car long before COVID to go to work. And there was a kid in the street, a boy, said, "Why aren't you going to school?" He said, "I ain't get any breakfast. I ain't get no food." The people went back into their home, brought out a sandwich to give the boy, said, "Giving you this sandwich, go to school now." The boy said, "Please wrap up half the sandwich. I want to carry it home for my mother. She has nothing to eat." That is invention.
Well, from what you're saying, I don't know. Like said, a trending now is a fed up Ralph.
I didn't say so, you know. It's what I hear in the street. I hear a lot in the street. Yesterday I was walking the street.
But will you hear that because you are Sir James and you're the one who started the opposition party and all of that? Is that the case? And what about polls for your party? Do your party do polls? I mean, have they been doing polls on a regular basis? Because we know the ULP have been doing their polls.
Well, ULP has no monopoly of polls.
So, James, I want to thank you very much this morning. You certainly created a story this morning. And he's very good with these one-liners, these zingers. And they're trending now. I want to thank you very much this morning, Sir James. As per usual, you bring the fire when you come. You never disappoint with the fire. You're in the best of health. I know that personally because of our relations. I know that. I know how you take it seriously. I know you do your swimming. I know when it comes to your mental stimulation, you read a lot. You're always talking about books and this and that and that. So you got some shelf life still?
Let me say one thing to you. Everybody been watching the news a lot about COVID, etc. And one of the things that fascinates me in the interviews with people abroad, nearly always you see a big bookshelf behind them. Nobody in St. Vincent have a bookshelf behind them when you interview them.
I want to thank you very much. That's your final. I know the phone lines are ringing, guys. We're literally out of time. Okay, let me just take.
Well, thank you, Ben, and thanks to all your listeners.
Yes. I know, guys, don't curse me because we did say we'll let you get in with Sir James this morning. A number of persons wanted to get in to say hello to you and to find out how you're doing. Well, guys, we're out of time, so we can't take the calls right now. And I want to thank you very much. You're saying? Sorry.
Well, thanks to you, your organization, and all your listeners.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sir James. All right. And of course, he's going to be around. He's definitely going to be around. And we'll be hearing more and more of Sir James. All right. Right here on OMG in the morning. Let's get in a bit of flex.
The real bad man of radio. Bing, Daniil, and DJ Flex. OMG in the morning.